going to cast Yamin versus Jose. It will be the second one, so let's take a look at the decks. Oh man. Yamin versus Jose. Have you experienced any player or seen any player playing from them before? Or not really?
No, actually, of these players we're seeing now, Yamin, Jose, and also the two previous one, I myself haven't seen much of them in like quick play, rank play, or uh, any like I haven't bumped into them myself much. So it will be interesting to see them how these players end up playing.
Okay, so we have Yamin as Vanguard, Hermann Goering. This is another match of Vanguard versus Balance. Hermann Goering itself is one of my favorite division. I wouldn't say the strongest, for sure, no. But I like the tools it has. And of course, Sturm Tiger, the pinnacle of the division. What do you think, Alex?
But I agree with you. I even once in the boot camp Discord, I posted the fun how fun a division is to play tier list, and Hermann Goering makes it S because if you can make a big boom, of course it's going to be a lot of fun, and I like it. It has a lot of good stuff. And
Yeah.
let's see here. Yeah, looking at the initial deck, I think that yeah, it looks pretty standard. One thing I would say is that Valkyr are I would just take Panzergrens above them because Valkyr you don't you run out of they cost more than Panzergrens and you run out of your MP44 ammo so quick. So in the end, they're almost like less efficient, and you lose a machine gun to get a few MP44s that you can only use a very short time for more points. I usually don't feel that they're worth it at their current state.
Yeah, not only they are more expensive, I think they are less numerous. Oh no, they are actually the same number. But what I mean is that if something is multi-role, most of the time it sucks in all the roles. Like this Valkyrie squad will lose against any dedicated CQC squad. It will lose on long range against line infantry. So doing everything a bit, but losing against a dedicated squad or basically dedicated Guardia or Strelk is not dedicated squad, and losing against them still sucks, especially for 35-point price.
Yes. And the 720 bullet on the MP44 really adds on top of it because then you're already going to lose four guys in your squad not to do anything. Otherwise, yeah, it looks good. Only single vet on the Panzer Force. I think two vet is quite common. I don't, but yeah, single vet. Seeing how Goering you don't get as many tanks as possible, so it still makes some sense, I would say.
Yeah, and
And
why it's important to vet your tanks. So for newer player watching the replay on the stream right now, you vet your tanks, usually medium tanks which have small price in terms of availability when you upvet them to the next stage. So you can see that on 0 it's 5, on 1 it's 4, and on 2 is 3. So you only lose like 1 to upvet all of your tank group. One more, and one is important because we said that this is number and cost effectiveness game, and when you have like 3 Panzer 4 which are not vetted against 3 Panzer 4 which are vetted, usually you lose 3 to 1 or 3 to 2 if you're lucky, and at least one of enemy Panzer IV will stay on the field. What it means that in next engagement, very next minute, he'll have one Panzer IV more and he'll have it upvetted and maybe more upvetted P4s, so you'll lose even further. Like snowball effect in tank combat, it's real, especially if you are going Vanguard versus Balance and you cannot easily replenish the troops on the front line.
Exactly, very much like you say, and to add on to that, it's especially important for the medium tanks that are meant to fight other medium tanks. That's why you often see it on Shermans and Panzer IVs. Is that usually if it's a Sherman and Panzer IV fight, which is you see quite common. Of course, it's quite the range of the combat is happening is going to be quite a lot determining who wins that fight. But then veterancy is a very big fight. That's often also why T-34 76s. You don't usually see them with veterancy. It's because you don't want those tanks to fight other tanks. So you don't really need that extra firepower. But in a tank versus tank, usually the first shot isn't the one that gets the kill. It's the second or maybe the third shot that is the most important. And with that extra veterancy, you just add top the chances of making sure that that first and second are 2 hits instead of having to get the third hit to get the kill, but also that you get your second shot off before your opponent. So if it's 2 tanks fighting, we say that they both hit, it's whoever gets the second shot who's gonna get the kill in many cases. Or if they're far away, they're gonna bounce each other a lot. And if you fire 10 shots and he fires 6 shots, of course, over time you're going to kill him faster, even if you both have a low pen chance, because you're really maxing out on the chances. You're rolling the dice much more often.
Yeah, in general, Hermann Goering is pretty expensive deck in terms of activation points. He went air heavy, anti-tank heavy, he brought all tank points, so we see that he's lacking infantry. But I think we'll see what it's in enemy deck, but I think this deck has a good shot for pushing power, and it has some personal flavor. We'll see how it works.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, it's a personal flavor of going, like you say, infantry light and air heavy, because maxing out the air tab on Falshim is quite expensive. So let's see if he can make use of that in the game.
Okay, let's go to other decks. So this is Yamin, and we go to Jose. Jose is playing balanced 352nd. Interesting choice. I don't know what bans and picks were, but just reminder, 352nd is pretty commonly given in Terrible Divisions tournament. Although this deck is like not completely bad, it has just several parts which make this deck not optimal in current meta.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that is good is that current meta compared to previously, like half a year ago, the bad decks are much closer to the good decks than I think that they've previously been in some cases. But yeah, this deck does struggle, and it's a very, very niche deck, and that very niche that it's good at, it's a very defensive deck, good at dealing with a lot of enemy anti-tanks. Sorry, a lot of enemy heavy tanks, which then would make it quite difficult because Hermann Goering isn't. Yes, it has the Sturm Tiger and has tigers, but still, it's not. It still has a decent infantry, usually a decent infantry tab. Now, this deck he's going to be up against is actually quite a small infantry tab to go. But that's the thing, is that it's a very defensive deck, and now that you're balanced against Vanguard, it's going to be a bit tough, I think. It's going to be very interesting, though, if we see a game similar to before, or if we see if Jose can really do the defensive play that is required here.
Few interesting choices though. He didn't decide to bring battery feeder, so artillery commander in the artillery tab, and we know that 352nd has pretty cheap artillery tab, so he could probably afford like 1 point more. Other thing, in the support tab, not only we see IG33 itself, we see it in B. I think that IG33 is completely inferior to IG18. Why? Because of rate of fire, because of being expensive in slow transport, and IG33 is usually overkill. Like if you need that much of suppression, bring a mortar or bomber. IG18 is much better because it comes faster, you have more of them, and in groups they can kill even Sturm Tiger without any problem.
Yeah, but exactly, and then that what I would actually even shift it to is that I think that right now MG42s are really good. So leaving from home without MG42s when you have the ability, I'm not saying that you can't do it, but I'm saying that you're missing out. I would say they are very good at the moment.
Yeah. I'm also kind of surprised by pack 4341 because okay, there are 2 Sturm Tigers and 2 Tigers, and he couldn't expect more because of phase locking and him going Vanguard. And dedicated card in a T-tab, especially that you have the Yacht Panther, is a bit overkill in my opinion. You don't need pack 43 in this matchup. It's expensive, it's slow, and you have more than enough tools to kill enemy armor. And it's not like he has a lot of armor himself.
Yeah, I would say though, I think that if I would do the major thing I think is with this deck is that actually it's very little infantry nay. You only ersatz, they don't fight infantry fights. They just hold the line. So all he has is one card of Panzer Grenadier with Faust. So he has 6 infantry in all of A phase. Against Vanguard, that's going to be very tough, especially with 352nd, because 352nd is very bad at supporting its infantry with other units, because you don't really have any good infantry support tags. Maybe the Panzer B2 can support a little bit, but they're not really good at that. On the other way, so that I think is going to be very tough. And the other one is that it's so much artillery. Usually in a 1v1, you don't need much artillery. Uh, Maybe you can go for artillery heavy games, but even I'm not. I would say that relatively, I'm gonna play a bit more to artillery than usual in 1v1, but I'm not. Why not being heavy artillery? And I think like 2 howitzers card in a deck is that's quite high. Like 3, you're going a lot here. So I think he's going very heavy, especially very early. And in a game now, I don't know if this is a deck that he built for the game or not. So I'm not going to judge there, but in a game, especially when you going against earlier aggression, like you're not going to be able to afford any artillery until very late into the game if you're up against an aggressive deck.
Yeah, not gonna lie, I think that this looks kind of like a team game wannabe deck, but we'll see what he managed. Like, artillery is still no joke. Taking them in B, okay, they are phase lock in B, okay, and he brought supply trucks with them. If he'll manage to deploy all of them, to be honest, the game would be already over. It means that Vanguard, Hermann Goering failed pushing, that he was able to stop SPW waves, he was able to stop ME 109 bombers and every other stuff. I think that he has a good shot, especially in A8 up. This A8 up is more than potent to stop any single plane for Hermann Goering. So basically, in my opinion, it comes to early trades. If Yamin gets enough ground and how Jose will deal with light vehicles and medium tanks, because in my opinion, this is the biggest question for the following game.
I think that exactly for the game coming up here, Jose has a problem going to deal with those early Panzer IVs. He does have like Jagdpanzer Pack 4. It's gonna be tough still dealing with them. And that's the thing, is that just dealing with the enemy infantry in A phase, he has so little things that can support his own infantry that he has so few of to begin with. So I think that he's really going to struggle in the tank and the infantry side in the early game. And unfortunately, those I would say are the 2 most important parts of the game at the moment.
Yeah, especially when you're defending against balance. I would say that balance is still viable if you know what you are doing, you're an experienced player, but if you're playing balance decks, most of the time, good balance deck are the deck which are pretty potent in defending against early aggression, so they have medium tanks and light vehicles themselves.
Exactly. It's like you said, like unless you know already your enemy is going to be a balance deck themselves, usually the best balance deck isn't something that has a lot of things in C. Usually a balance deck itself only has a few cards. What the balance deck is about is just being able to survive the early game and then having slightly more stuff than the enemy in C. Because if your enemy runs out, you don't need to have 40 infantry left. If you have 10 more infantry and 10 more tanks and he runs out, you win either way.
Yeah. What I can say after this deck and previous deck is that Yamin is going all in early game. What I like with one of my favorite decks, Hermann Goering, he doesn't have more things in the deck to last more than 40 minutes. But when I'm looking at Jose, he has enough stuff to bring for at least 70 minutes or more. So we'll see. Yes. We'll see basically how the game will turn out around minute 30, if it's closed, not, or close to be closed. Because if not, I think that Jose can basically out attrition Yamin. So let's jump into the game. Replays. Do you like Jagd Panther as a unit itself, Alat?
I think it's an okay unit actually. It's just like it's it's the biggest brother of the Stug Jagdpanzer family, right? It's Stug for Panzer and Jagdpanzer. But in the end, like, and it's still, I think, a bit niche, and I think, but the biggest thing it suffer from is being in the Decadism. It plays to the same. It's a defensive play, which is what usually the 350 second tries to do, and the 350 second really needs them. But yeah, the downside is that they're still not good against dealing against enemy heavy tanks, because they're pretty much like, it's a 50-50 often when you engage in those fights, depending on what you're up on the other side. So it's actually like a anti-heavy tank that doesn't really want to fight King Tigers, or maybe IS-261 can fight from a long distance, like very long distance, but it's still like a bit risky, I would say.
Yeah. By the way, deployment starts at minute 640, and the map
All
is
right.
is Orsha North. So that's what I kind of fear. Okay, you have Panzer, and if you manage to bring it like to the open, yeah, it can lock down the area. But how are you going to deal with medium tanks and heavy tanks on the flanks? Because like you cannot really bring a T-gun there because it's risky. On 500 meters, you will lose even to Valkyrie or any other infantry squad, and P-Force will basically melt every stuff you bring there.
Exactly, and I think this is a good map because it's a bit balanced. It has a lot of like the really thick sides and a bit more open in the middle. It's still more close quarter centered than open centered, but that's the problem, is that often I see in this game is that whichever is the close quarter center division, they really force in the sides, and then the one that is better in the open is spending all of their energy trying to just defend the place they're bad at fighting, instead of actually pushing the open in the middle where they're strong themselves. Which is
Yeah.
one thing that, like we talked about earlier, it's very important to dictate the battle. So if you're aggressive and really push in the areas where you are strong, and you get your opponent to just focus all of their power in defending those areas, then you're winning. You're doing it in the right way, because you're dictating the pace of the battle to make sure that it happens the way you want the battle to happen, instead of your opponent being able to leverage what they're good at.
Yeah, looking at the deployment, I can say that it looks like Yamin has a bit of experience himself. I see that he is using move commands in certain areas which are usually contested from the red side, so the side of Jose. Uh, we'll see if we manage to unload or move them another order in the meantime. On the left flank though of Yamin, he's using only move command. I hope he doesn't lose any infantry in the transport. By the way, I'll tell me then when you will be ready. In the meantime, Jose is bringing first artillery in the very first seconds of the game, a 105 millimeter 70 point piece. It's not that expensive, but that's unusual, at least for me, pick for balance. Why? Because not only you will struggle on the front line against superior or basically higher numbers of Yamin forces as Vanguard, but also you're clipping kinda yourself with artillery bot at the start. I know certain players which do that, but usually not at the very beginning. 70 points usually is enough to hold or to lose the flank if you have them or you don't.
Yeah, I would say exactly the same, is that you're already struggling, and as we said, Vanguard versus balance is really important to really do well the very first engagement. So artillery is not something that is going to do well quickly. It's something that, over time gives you value. So it's a very, I wouldn't say that it's like, oh, this is shit, never do it. But for newer players, I would not very much recommend it. It's a very niche play that you can bring certain artillery. I do it myself sometimes, but I wouldn't really get into that, because that's something that I like. It's a bit hard to pull off, and even if you pull it off, it's not always even that good. So I don't think, like you say, it's not worth it. And especially bringing in the Jack Panther and artillery, he's already spending a lot of points in like small in like few units. So that makes it, he has a thin line, and you don't want a thin line when you're going up against a Vanguard player here. While, like you said, Yamin has a very good both the orders, but I also think he has a great composition of infantry. He has a lot of the Flammenwerfers going up early, taking the contested points, being supported by the uh, early armored cars, and then following up, you have a bunch of Panzer force to take with the tanks, and you have some anti-tank guns taking up position. I think it's a very good start here for Yamin composition wise.
Yeah, I also think that bringing artillery at the very start, you really need to know what you are doing and against who you are going or what is the map. On this map, it's very risky. It's very easy to lose both flanks, sometimes even the middle. And yes, you have Jagdpanther covering the middle, but it also is a bit of matchup knowledge. You know that Yamin has clusters in A and there is no AA for you, and usually fighter is not quick enough to stop enemy cluster from killing your stuff, and you won't deploy your AA enough in time before the cluster arrived. Also, when you bring artillery early, no matter if this is 40 point mortar or 70 point 105 millimeter, use it. Like, use it for smoke. This piece doesn't have smoke, so I'm very curious what he will target, and he's not targeting yet. Are you ready to go, Alex?
Yes.
640. So 3, 2, 1. Let's go. And let's see how the match unfolds. I'm pretty skeptic about left flank of Hause. Okay, there is one armored card going. There is Flammenwerfer and bunch of Ersatztruppen, even a pack. But I'm not really think that's enough, especially pack in this position. It's not going to save you.
Yeah, and also the risky thing is that often in this, especially on blue side, that's one thing I almost always do if I'm on blue side. I rush the red city because you have 3 flags super close up. If you just take that city, you get a double tick just for free, like instantly. And the flag that is not in the city, you can actually sneak a lot taking that flag by going where the pack 38 here is for blue player. Just sneaking up an infantry there, and you can get that flag almost without a battle while the battle is in the city. So it's just having Ersatztruppen in a pack was a bit risky. In the meantime, we see that, there's gonna be very much focus on the flanks here, while Yamin is really going light in the middle.
Yeah, but that's what he should really do. He knows that any overextend from Jagdpanther or anything like that will be already punished with clusters. And on the flanks, Hose deck doesn't really, I mean, not on deck because of his composition. The deck itself, the division itself, doesn't have a lot of tools to fight in this close combat area.
Yeah, I think that player skill aside in the game, the deck is really stacked in against Jose with the division and the map, and or the division and the map, and also the income here. I don't think really he made it in favor putting this up, so it's going to be very tough for him here. And his flanks are getting very decimated on both sides at the same time here.
Yeah, very good micro from Yamin with Flammenwerfer and Smoke. SPW supporting means the first flag on the right, on his left flank going in his favor. In the meantime, Pack 38 engaging the Jagdpanther. I think he forgot to put it on an efficient shot, or it's probably.
Yes. Yeah, efficient shot is a command you have that makes it sure that your tank guns only fire if it has a decent chance of penetrating. This is very good because otherwise things like this might happen. Your anti-tank gun is going to fire at a tank, it doesn't have a chance to penetrate. Tank sees you and it's just going to slowly kill you while you just bounce off its armor. And one thing that I was just going to say that the Jagdpanzer is very risky position, because Jagdpanzer, like all heavy tanks, you want air cover, especially against decks like Hermann Goering, because they have access to cluster bombers. So you really need this flak whirling here, but you need it to keep it. You don't need. You want the flak whirling to be close to the Jagdpanzer, and not the Jagdpanzer to run away from it, because as soon as the Jagdpanzer gets too far away from the flak whirling, a well-timed cluster bomber can just easily deal with that Jagdpanzer.
Yeah, and flag wheeling in this position, like in the light forest and in the green forest in the front line, I think that this is good ambush position. So the turning back, a Ju-87 will maybe die. but you won't stop. And already Ju-87 is coming, and flag wheeling doesn't have line of sight.
Exactly, like yes, like you said, because of the thick forest is in the way, it doesn't fire until very very late, which make you lose the Jack Panther. Yes, you kill it, but the loss was much bigger.
Yeah. Not only in points, but also in the cards. Like, he lost 1/3 of the card, only 1 out of 3 cluster bombers, and you lost whole card of Yacht Panthers in A.
In the meantime, we see Jose struggle here in the south with the. He doesn't have anything but Ersatztruppen, which we see here. He has an army of Ersatztruppen, but the enemy, like this, maybe when you have 6 Ersatztruppen against a Flammenwerfer, maybe you have a chance. But that's the problem with Ersatz is that it usually we've talked about how being just more than your enemy is very important. I think that Ersatztruppen or the Ersatztruppen like troops is the one exception is that even if you're very much overwhelming your enemy, they are not going to do much by themselves. Ersatztruppen is to hold the front line and just give visions to whatever support you have or other infantry that deals more damage, or maybe it's a tank or an armored car that actually deals the damage. Because just Ersatztruppen by themselves, they're really not going to win against much at all.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's going to be third or even 2 more flags for Yamin very pretty soon, because Ersatztruppen are not really even suited to fight against SPW, and there is Valkyrie around, Flammenwerfer around, and it's already 15-9 for Yamin.
Yeah, I think one thing we see here with Yamin is mistaking is in the south. He has a pioneers trying to attack this Ersatztruppen blob, but one very important thing is whenever you send infantry into where enemy is, always use the hunt command, because in this game, while your infantry is moving, they take increased damage. They take significantly more damage than they're standing still. So if that's one of the reasons why Molotov is so good, because Molotovs, once they hit, they create a flame which makes the enemy move. When enemy move, they'll take significantly more damage, which makes you're very much more favored in winning that engagement. So if you give a move command with your infantry moving into enemy infantry, they're going to have a huge advantage fighting you. And that's why the hunt command is good, because the hunt command makes it so once your infantry spots enemy that can shoot, it will stop and just shoot instead, and then not take that additional damage of moving and shooting at the same time.
Yeah, in the meantime, a questionable decision from Jose to bring 3 AT guns to the front line. I think it was a misclick or basically a mistake, even a Nebelwerfer. So 2 things. Don't bring AT gun as a frontline units, because in CQC they will lose even against Panzer IV, SPW, and not mentioning, you know that there is a lot of infantry around, and investing into another Nebelwerfer, so another artillery unit, when you are losing basically whole front line, it's not going to work.
Yes, exactly. Like it's like we said, you got to invest in everything that can hold the front. Anything in the back is not going to do. And that's the thing with the artillery here as well. Is like the one few times artillery actually works in early is when you know your enemy is going to be stuck in a position for a while. But in this case, we see just Yamin is just blasting past the enemy, which makes the artillery extremely inefficient, because once it aligned to one position, whatever you're trying to shoot at has already pushed further into your lines, and then not being able to do anything. And here you see now he's trying to bring some Panzer IVs, I mean B2s, but yeah, they don't have a chance against the Panzer IVs here.
Yeah, I have a feeling that Jose is a team gamer, either new player or team gamer, because he has this feeling of outstrading enemy, like taking artillery to pay for itself, even though it's not really doing it right now, bringing AT plane and slowly creeping enemy forces. All right, you kill few tanks, few SPWs, but by cost effectiveness and income disparity, he is taking your spawn. He brought 1 Gepard right now, but he was ignoring your air force and your artillery for good 8 minutes, and he was just pushing you on the flanks where you have not really a shot against Hermann Goering.
Yeah, it's like you say. I think then for Jose to learn is, I think one thing is watching the game like this and hearing us discussing it, but then also watching other players, like watching El Bowser's or Proto Soccer stream, or watching the YouTube videos of their game, because then you get a more of a feeling of the balance of units in 1v1, because it's significantly different from when you're playing a team game meta, because you really like in the team games you can more, the enemy isn't going to be as fast as pushing you, and you can be more playing a slow play, while as you can see here, Jose trying to play the more slower game is getting punished hard by Yamin for it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if, I mean, for sure Yamin has better KD, that I think, but I think that even if, in terms of KD, Jose didn't lose that hard. It's just that he doesn't have enough points to cover the front line, especially if he brought 2 expensive artillery pieces, AA, at least 3 planes, and Yacht Panther in the first minute.
Yeah, I still think that it's going to very much favor Yamin, but I think, yeah, Yamin had a few things that he can also improve on as he advanced. He lost a few. You're always going to, of course, lose a few things when you push into your enemy, as you're going to be a bit of a disadvantage there. But in some ways, yeah, he lost a bit more. You, Jose, managed to gain back some uh, kills there, but it's very much decisive either way, I think. And one thing I think, talking about that, maybe I'm just being nitpicky now. When it comes to 20 millimeter, like a Gepard or a 20 millimeter, uh, I don't think it's worth it unless you get like 3 of them. They're not to defend. Like a single Gepard or a single 20 millimeter, they will do unless you use it for infantry support, or if you actually use it for AA, what it's going to do is it's going to prevent an enemy recon plane or a plane hovering above your lines. It's going to have to make that plane go away after a while. It's not going to shoot anything down. It might be a very like a slight advantage if you manage to move get an air fight and you move the air fight over to your over your Gepard, but in and of themselves, like very light AA really needs to be in very large numbers to actually do anything against enemy air.
Yeah. What I really like from Yamin, though, I'm not sure if he has experience against better players. I would, to be honest, love him to watch in the league because he has the spirit of attacking. He has, smelled the blood in the air. He went to the spawn. He decided to attack the other flank. He decided to push into the middle hill. That's a good offensive spirit we want to see.
Yeah, I think Yamin played it very well. As we said, like his deck looked pretty good. His composition going into in the game here, how he built his forces went very good. And also one great thing we see here that I talked last game is that he sent some more forces to the south. Notice he didn't need those extra 2 Hermann Goering pioneers in the south, so he's now reallocated them where the actual fight is, which is something a lot more experienced players, even myself included, sometimes miss out on doing.
Yep. And for Jose, everyone started at one point. Don't feel disencouraged. You'll get better. You have some good basics. You know that you should trade, but the next step you should try to work on is like trying to hold the ground. And I think that balance is still a choice for very good players and very experienced players at least.
I would, yeah, or maybe not very, but yes, I would say it's like Vanguard. I would say is the best one to start off with the game with, and it's like you say, like I think that's a little bit the downside of the Greenhorn Cup is that it's while yes, it's mostly newer players, the internal balance there is very very tough and is very random, which can make it tough then for newer players. So I certainly hope he doesn't get discouraged because, as you say, he's nailing a lot of things down, and I think that if he gets to get more of the 1v1 mindset and just learns from this and like watches some other games play, I certainly think that he can do a lot better for next time. It was a tough play as Yamin played very well. I would seeing this as a Greenhorn game, I think Yamin played very well.
Yeah, like
very 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 tough matchup for Jose here, I would say.
Small mistakes to Yamin, but in general he has this idea of cost effectiveness, of supporting his infantry, using CQC squads in the forest, like clustering and picking even the deck. It was brutal for Jose and very very good showcase of skill from Yamin. I think that for Greenhorn standards, for newest player to the game, Yamin is very very good.
I very much agree. Yamin, it's an amazing start here how he plays here in this start. So I hope that Jose doesn't get too discouraged because there's certainly uh, plays left to be made here. And but yes, this game is now closing out, and let's see how the KD goes.
So that's what I mentioned. I think that even for total defeat, Jose wasn't trading that bad. Okay, 400 in how long was the game? Like 13 minutes feels a lot, especially considering that Yamin had 300 points advantage from income disparity. But it wasn't that brutal as you could see in the flags.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at the kills, like it was very much like the kills that he got was very, very, very like focused on key areas. Like you can see, it's like one Valkyrie unit and one Panzer IV Führer pretty much composes half of all the kills on Yamin's side.
Yeah. So very good showcase of skill from Yamin. I think that a good base of Jose. He tried to use combined arms. He was using fighters. He knew that he should bring AA when he has a heavy tank piece or heavy anti-tank piece. He was trying to use artillery. I think with a bit 1v1 practice and a bit more focus on cheap, cost-effective frontline holders, he will be, good new player to see further in the SD League.
Certainly, yes. Looking forward to see some more games.